What happens when modern warfare starts to look less like a battlefield and more like a video game? Precision drones, real-time satellite feeds, command centers filled with screens and digital maps. Today, military operations are often directed from thousands of miles away using advanced technology that looks strikingly similar to the simulations used in gaming. But recently, critics have begun asking a controversial question about the rhetoric and approach of U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Are some leaders beginning to treat war more like a strategy game than a human conflict? Tonight we explore the controversy, the technology shaping modern warfare, and the debate over how political leaders talk about war in the digital age. The controversy. The debate started after several public comments and media appearances by Pete Hegseth discussing military operations and strategy. Supporters say his tone reflects confidence and clarity about American military power. Critics argue something very different. They say the language used by some political figures can make war sound simpler, cleaner, and more controlled than it really is. In interviews and commentary, Hegseth has often spoken about precision strikes, advanced military technology, overwhelming battlefield dominance. To supporters, this messaging emphasizes strength and deterrence. But to critics, the framing risks creating the impression that war can be managed almost like a controlled operation, and that perception is where the video game criticism comes from. Because modern military technology has fundamentally changed how wars are fought. How technology changed war. For most of human history, war meant direct combat between armies. Soldiers fought face to face. Battles were chaotic, unpredictable, and brutally physical. But today, the battlefield looks very different. Modern warfare increasingly relies on drones, satellites, artificial intelligence, cyber operations, long-range missile systems. A military commander can now observe a battlefield in real time using surveillance technology. Targets can be identified from space, and strikes can be launched from thousands of miles away. Inside military command centers, operations often involve watching screens filled with digital maps and live video feeds. To an outside observer, it can look remarkably similar to a strategy game, but despite the technology, the reality of war has not become less serious. Behind every missile strike or drone operation are real consequences for soldiers and civilians. And that tension is exactly why the debate about political rhetoric has become so intense. The political language of war. How leaders talk about war matters. Throughout history, political language has shaped how the public understands military conflict. During World War II, leaders used language focused on survival and sacrifice. During the Cold War, rhetoric often emphasized ideological struggle. Today, the language surrounding war sometimes focuses heavily on technology and precision. Phrases like surgical strikes, targeted operations, neutralizing threats. These terms are meant to convey control and strategic clarity, but critics argue that such language can unintentionally make war sound less destructive than it actually is. And that's where the debate surrounding Pete Hegseth becomes part of a larger conversation. Is modern political messaging about war becoming too detached from the human reality of conflict? Or is it simply reflecting how warfare itself has evolved? Supporters. Argument. Supporters of Hegseth reject the criticism entirely. They argue that strong messaging about military capability is essential for deterrence. From their perspective, emphasizing America's technological advantage sends a clear signal to adversaries. It tells potential enemies that the United States has the ability to respond quickly and decisively. In that sense, discussing military power confidently may actually prevent war rather than encourage it. Supporters also argue that modern warfare technology can reduce casualties. Precision strikes and advanced surveillance systems allow militaries to target threats more accurately than in the past. From this viewpoint, technological warfare is not a game. It's a way of making military operations more effective and potentially less destructive. But critics remain skeptical. The critics' concern. Critics worry that technological distance can change how leaders and the public think about war. When battles are fought remotely through drones and digital systems, the emotional and psychological weight of conflict may feel different. Some analysts argue that the easier war appears technologically, the easier it may become politically. If military action is framed as quick, controlled, and technologically superior, leaders may face less public resistance to using force. That's why some observers believe rhetoric comparing war to strategic games is dangerous. Not because leaders literally think war is a game, but because the language used to describe war can shape how seriously people view its consequences. And in a world where conflicts can escalate quickly, that perception matters. The bigger question. Ultimately, the debate surrounding Pete Hegseth touches on a much larger issue. How should leaders talk about war in the 21st century? Modern military technology has transformed how conflicts are fought, but the moral and human consequences of war remain the same. Every military decision still affects real lives. Every strike still carries real risks. And every conflict still leaves lasting consequences long after the headlines fade. So the real question may not be whether any one leader treats war like a game. The real question is whether modern technology is changing how the world thinks about war itself. Is Pete Hegseth treating war like a video game? Supporters say the criticism misunderstands the realities of modern military strategy. Critics say the language surrounding modern warfare risks making conflict seem too easy. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Technology has changed the battlefield, but it has not changed the stakes. Because even in an age of drones, satellites, and digital warfare, war is still one of the most serious decisions any government can make. If you want deeper breakdowns on global conflicts, political power struggles, and the forces shaping modern warfare, subscribe to The Broken News. Because understanding the language of war may be just as important as understanding the wars themselves.